All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Magnetism podcast. This is episode 6, and I'm your host, Tuan, the founder of Glow Ops Media. And this is the space where the creator economy, where culture and the psychology of influence all connect and collide together. So every single week, I'm going to be riffing off of some of the unseen signals that shape how people show up, okay? From fitness to fashion to culture to brand building, because what makes someone and what makes a brand and what makes a movement magnetic isn't just in the tactical execution, right, or the strategic playbooks. It's in the story, it's in the energy, and it's in the presence that they choose to carry and embody in every chosen moment. So here's the raw truth that I've been sitting with over the weekend, okay? So we are living in the greatest time in human history to be alive, okay? Not just for the lifestyle that we now live, not just for the technology, okay? Not just for the opportunities, but for anyone who wants to create, who wants to build something great, who wants to shift culture, okay? Yet you see the dominant narrative all over social media, all over TikTok, all over Instagram that, all you hear is we're living in a very overwhelmed, overstimulated, nervous system, dysregulated society, etc., right? All you hear is burning out, it's about healing, it's about overwhelm and too much chaos and too much inputs and like all that, yeah? Like, I get it, but I don't completely buy that either, and I say that truthfully, okay? Think about it. All those things are true. Okay, well, we are flooded with more inputs than we could ever fathom, right? In that ancestors across the last 10 lifetimes were now able to fathom that we have access to now at the touch of our fingerprints, in the palm of our hands, right? But never in history has aesthetics and creators and technology been so accessible. So a girl in Adelaide with just an iPhone can shift culture in a way that Paris fashion houses could 30 years ago. A founder with zero ad spend but the right creative collaborations can outsell legacy brands that have been around for decades, okay? So AI, UGC, social, all this technology and all these tools that our parents couldn't even imagine, couldn't even fathom, okay? And look, this isn't some motivational fluff, some motivational bullshit, right? This is cultural reality. Go back even just 20 or 30 years ago. If you wanted to launch a brand, you needed millions of dollars, right? You need venture capital backing, you need agencies, warehouses, film crews, right? You need permission from gatekeepers. But now you start with a vision. You need a vision, an iPhone, and maybe just at the start, right? One creator who resonates, one creator who gets it. Distribution is free and attention is global. I'm going to tell you a quick story. Let's look at Gymshark. Okay, so it was started by Ben Francis in 2012 out of his parents' garage in Bromsgrove in the UK. And what he was doing at the time was he was screen printing tees, right, between uni classes. But there was no venture capital backing, no millions of dollars in a war chest somewhere, right? All it started was just a vision. And you gotta also remember what the world looked like back then, right? Instagram was still brand new. YouTube fitness was still forming, right? It was still exploding. You take brands like Nike, Adidas, Under Armour, they were still dominating the markets. They were still the legacy giants. So if you zoomed out at what it looked like if you were most people, you could say that, hey, the space is saturated, right? It's cutthroat, that it's a red ocean, that is noisy, that it's unpredictable. So most people looked at that environment and saw chaos, yeah? But Ben Francis saw overflow. Instead of retreating, instead of shrinking, okay, Gymshark leaned into that flood, right? They leaned into that chaos and they alchemized it. What they did was they tapped YouTubers before quote-unquote influencer marketing was even a term, before it was even a thing, before it was even an established norm. They built the aesthetics that big brands weren't serving, and they let the creators carry the brand global. So you fast forward, Gymshark now does over 600 million pounds in annual revenue, and they're now valued at north of over 1 billion pounds. So it's the same chaos, it's the same noise, it's the same saturated environment. Some people, some companies, some brands got overwhelmed, but what Gymshark did was they turned it and they alchemized it into fuel. Here's what's wild. Back then, tapping into YouTubers was novel, it was radical, it was transformative, but today, creators are table stakes. Every brand uses them, every brand knows they need to use them. The overflow now isn't the opportunity, it's the creators themselves, because every founder knows that UGC content moves product in a way that traditional advertising, in a way that traditional video ads does not. But the landscape has shifted again. The overflow isn't the opportunity, there's the overflow of creators themselves, right? Which means that the game isn't, shouldn't we use creators anymore? But the better question to ask is, which creators, which aesthetics, and which narratives will actually cut through the noise in the marketplace. So that's the tension right now in the market. It's the chaos moment that we're sitting in today. And it's exactly why new ecosystems, new curators, and new creative studios are emerging, right? And this is the natural evolution of the state of the union of this overflow. So tying back, when people tell me that life is overwhelming, life is stressful, my nervous system is fried, right? That there's too much chaos. I see it differently, okay? We're not in overwhelm, we're in absolute overflow. The same flood of inputs that drowns one person feeds another, okay? Your nervous system doesn't need to shrink. It doesn't need to retreat, right? It needs to upgrade, because this era that we are living in right now isn't unsafe. It's abundant, right? Because the real flex is metabolizing chaos into leverage, right? And when you can metabolize chaos into leverage, that's when you can shift culture, right? When you can metabolize chaos into culture, that's when your brand becomes unfucking stoppable. So here's the takeaway. Overflow is only overwhelmed if you don't know who the fuck you are, okay? So anchor your identity, and suddenly the noise becomes fuel. This era is the greatest golden ticket that humanity has ever printed. So the only question that I will leave you with, and the only question is, will you play it? Thanks for listening, and I will talk to you next week on the Magnetism podcast for episode 7. Take care.